more of that later on.
It's a little wet down here.
I imagine cooking dinner down below right now is proving to be quite challenging. Sometimes the waves break between the hulls and smack on the leeward hull pretty hard. When that happens, it feels like the boat's breaking in half. That was the cell that we went through, the one with all the lightning. And we've got another one coming up behind us, but hopefully not as large as the previous one. It's gotten interesting again. Oh, that's not good. As I feared, we have lost the coffee maker. I repeat, we have lost the coffee maker.
Moment of silence, not a word was spoke. The day that they found the coffee pot broke. A crew melancholy with nary a joke. The day that they found the coffee pot broke. Spirits depleted, no fire to stoke. The day that they found the coffee pot broke. Never again to feel happy they'd woke. The day that they found the coffee pot broke. He refused ever to settle, armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. This was the moment that would test his mettle, armed with a filter, mug, and a kettle. Armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. Not accepting a life without coffee, they pressed forward on the deep blue sea. Looked to the sky, said a prayer, said a plea. They pressed forward on the deep blue sea. Begged the gods down upon their knees. They pressed forward on the deep blue sea, not ever knowing if it was to be. They pressed forward on the deep blue sea. He refused ever to settle, armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. This was the moment that would test his mettle, armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. Armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. Ruminating, he began to obsess. No coffee pot, the crew in distress. He tried to create a basic French press. No coffee pot, the crew in distress. Trying real hard not to make a mess. No coffee pot, the crew in distress. He wished that the waves would shake the boat less. No coffee pot, the crew in distress. He refused ever to settle, armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. This was the moment that would test his mettle, armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. Armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. They admired him and the effort he gave. A madman with a crew to save, not knowing if he was insane or brave. A madman with a crew to save. He was tossed round the room with every wave. A madman with a crew to save, wondering if this would lead to his grave. A madman with a crew to save. He refused ever to settle, armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. This was the moment that would test his mettle, armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. Armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. How did he do it? How did he know? The shimmering glory began to flow. All of their spirits began to grow. Shimmering glory began to flow. Here a rank amateur with a crew of pros. Shimmering glory began to flow. He took a sip and his face went aglow. The shimmering glory had begun to flow. And he refused ever to settle, armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. This was the moment that would prove his mettle. Armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. Armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. They began to cheer at the display the moment that he had saved the day. Couldn't believe that he'd found the way the moment that he had saved the day. When asked how the voyage made it, they will say the moment that he had saved the day. They'll be talking about it until they are gray. The moment that he had saved the day, he refused ever to settle, armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. This was the moment that would test his mettle. Armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. Armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. Armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle. Armed with a filter, a mug, and a kettle.